Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, it is just me. Benjamin B is still on vacation. He's in the old Minnesota. He's up there catching fish and having a good time with his family. And so it's just me today, and couldn't be more happy to be with you. And hey, listen, first things first, thank you for tuning in on whichever podcast app it is that you choose, and thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you want to reach out to either myself or Ben, you could always reach us. Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. We're going to ask you for your phone number, and we want to have a conversation with you about your specific situation. So I wanted to come on today and do a quick episode on what to do when somebody returns home after they've completed treatment. And this is something that can be rather unnerving to the family when somebody does come home after completing, set amount of time in treatment, whether it be 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, 6 months, 1 year, whatever the case is. If your loved one does return home, what should you do and how should you act? So the first thing that I'm going to say is do not panic when your loved one comes home. Don't act weird. Don't make it awkward, because if it's awkward for you, it's just as awkward for them. And arguably, they are in a much more stressful situation than you are, because they are the ones that they can't really turn to drugs and alcohol, because that's what they use to cope with stress for the longest time. And they, at this point of their recovery, hopefully have figured out that they use drugs and alcohol to deal with these sorts of things. So the last thing that you want to do is make it awkward. Don't make it a spectacle. It's not something that needs to be a huge deal. This is your loved one. They're coming home. They were on an extended stay somewhere getting better. So when they do return home, do not make it weird. So I oftentimes encourage families and loved ones to just have open dialogue. Have conversation with your loved one about, how was their experience there? Don't probe them with a ton of questions, and I'll get to this at a later point. Just have an open conversation. Remember, they were gone for a while, and you lived your life, or your family lived your life, or whatever the case is. You guys went on, and hopefully, while they were in treatment, you did some work yourself. Maybe you joined some sort of Al-Anon group. You got involved in the local church in some capacity that helps you understand more about addiction and how you can navigate it. So it's something that when they return home, you guys can, and I'm not saying you do this, is like you're in the car and you're driving home from the airport or whatever the case is. You don't have to have this conversation as soon as you meet up with the person. Let it happen organically, because no two situations are the same. Your loved one could be super frustrated that they had to come back home, or they could be very excited that they're back home and they want to have these conversations and they want to explain everything that has happened over the last however long they were in treatment. Do not force it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Let it happen organically. And in this conversation, talk to them how you would talk to them about any other aspect of their life. Maybe however you would talk to them about work, or, their boyfriend or their girlfriend, if it's your child, or, how you would talk to them about children, if it's your spouse. I don't know, but it's not something, you're not interrogating them. You're not probing for information. You're just having a conversation because you want to understand better. And that's okay. And if your loved one doesn't want to have this conversation right now, don't make it happen. And don't get upset. Don't get defensive. Oh, you've been gone for so long. I haven't got to speak to you at all. And now you're home and you don't even want to talk to me about what happened, so on and so forth. Don't do that. This isn't about having a pity party for yourself. This isn't about anything. This is just your loved one's home, and that's great. Look through that lens. Hey, I'm glad you're home. And when you're ready to talk, I'm here and I'll be ready to have that conversation with you, but it's on your time. It's not on mine. Another thing is that I want you to be encouraging. I want you to, again, be somebody that they feel comfortable with in their newfound recovery. I can't tell you how many times I have spoken to families that their child has come home and they call me super frustrated that, their loved one isn't doing exactly what they want them to do. Because a lot of times the parents know while family is in treatment or loved one is in treatment, the loved ones kind of start to understand, okay, when they return home, these are the things that I need to watch out for. Are they going to meetings? Are they active in their recovery in some capacity? Do they seem happy? Do they seem content? Do they seem angry, frustrated all the time? Parents and loved ones oftentimes will start to understand and learn to see relapse signs, and they'll pick up on those things. But you could be on such eggshells that you're like constantly watching for it. And if they don't make their bed, oh my gosh, they're in relapse mode, whatever the case is. And they'll call me frustrated that Billy's not doing this, Johnny's not doing that. I don't understand. They were in treatment for so long and they come home and everything is just, it seems like it's going to shambles. Do not get in that frame of mind, because what that's going to do, going back to the first point of conversation, it's going to spark a conversation that is going to revolve around anger, resentment. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. And it makes things so much worse. If you pick up on your loved one having maybe some sort of relapse signs, or they're not, going along as you think they should be encouraging. Hey, listen, I picked up that you haven't been to a meeting in a couple of days, and I think that it would be good, at least for me. I would feel better if you went to a meeting. Always have these sorts of conversations looking through the lens of how can I help? How can I be encouraging? What can I do to help this situation? Do not have these conversations and look through the lens of you need to do this, you should do that, so on and so forth, because honestly, it's not about you. And when you do those sorts of things, it's pretty selfish in a way. You have to be, this is their journey. And look, it may not end up the way that you want it to end up. Could they relapse? Sure. But you know what? You can't control that. As much as you think that you can, you can't. And it'll be frustrating for you the longer you go on. If you hold these standards for your loved one and they don't meet them, you're going to think you're doing something wrong. You're going to think that the treatment center did something wrong. And in the end, it's the process. And if they do end up relapsing, hopefully they can enter back into treatment or whatever the case is. But be encouraging. Do not come at it from some sort of anger or resentment, and it'll serve you well. I promise you that. Another thing is I want you to somewhat partake in the journey. Hopefully you have gotten to the point where you understand, hey, this isn't just about my loved one. There's things that I can do as well. There's things that I can partake in. There's groups that I can get involved in. And listen, maybe your loved one went and got sober and they're not consuming alcohol or drugs at all, and they got involved in a 12-step fellowship, but maybe, you're sipping back a few too many glasses of wine. That could be an opportunity for you. And I'm not saying you're an alcoholic, but maybe it makes sense for you to go to a 12-step fellowship, and maybe you can go with your loved one. I don't know. I'm just saying that it's okay for you to be part of the journey, so as long as your loved one wants you to be part of the journey. Don't interject yourself and don't say, I'm going to the meeting with you, whether you like it or not. That's not going to do any good. But if you guys have a conversation and it's, hey, yeah, come to the meeting with me, I think it'd be good. You may go there and find that, hey, this is really beneficial, because 12-step meetings, 12-step fellowship has very little to do with drugs and alcohol, and it has everything to do with the way that we live our lives. And so you oftentimes hear, oh, meetings, I don't need those. What do I need? I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not an addict. It's not about that. That just so happens to be the best place to go to enter into recovery, but you don't necessarily have to be a full-blown addict. All you have to have is a desire to stop drinking. And if you sip down too many martinis on the weekends and maybe you wake up with a headache and you want to put that by the wayside and you don't want to do that anymore and you have a desire to stop, by all means, you can go to these meetings and it could be very beneficial for you. If your loved one wants you on the journey with them, go on the journey. If they don't want you on the journey with them per se, they don't want you going to the same meetings and everything, make your own journey. But at least you guys are doing this together. You can also partake in this journey, like I said earlier, in Al-Anon meetings through the local church, whatever the case is. Support groups, they have them online, they have them in person. There's no reason why you can't be part of the journey while your loved one is on it as well. So going back to what we talked about before when I said asking questions, and I'll get to it later, this is where I want to talk about this a little bit. We're not going to get too deep into it. When I say ask questions, ask open-ended questions and be okay with whatever the answers are. Because again, a lot of times when our loved ones return home, we have some sort of idea about what they should be like, how they should act, how they should respond, the answers that they should give us. And I'm going to challenge you to put all that out of your mind because it's not about that. You can ask questions like, hey, how was your experience at treatment? Or if they've been home for a while, hey, how was your experience at that meeting tonight? Did you meet anybody new? Those sorts of things. Is there anything that I can do to help you, support you in your recovery? Maybe I want to make sure that I can support you the best way that I can. And maybe I've fallen short in a couple of areas that I don't know about. So I'm asking you if you want to let me know what those are so I can work on them. Those sorts of things. Ask questions, be inquisitive, but don't be interrogative. I don't know if that's a word, but again, don't interrogate, have open conversation. It'll serve you well. And the last thing is, do not gossip. I know so many families that their family dynamic literally thrives off of gossiping about one another. The last thing that you want to do is talk to people about your loved one's situation. I don't care if Aunt so-and-so is calling and asking a bunch of questions about Johnny's sobriety, so on and so forth. You know, if you do want to talk to her, it better be in ways, in the form of encouraging and, just good. I don't want you to gossip, and I don't want you to say, oh, Johnny's not doing this, he's not doing that. I feel like this was all for nothing, so on and so forth. That is not good because one, you shouldn't gossip at all. And two, if it does get back to your loved one that you've been talking about him or her behind their back, it makes things so much worse. And again, going back to if they do relapse, they don't trust you. They're not going to come to you and talk to you about their situation because they have the fear that you're just going to go to, aunt or uncle or grandmother or whoever and talk about it. And they're just not going to trust you anymore. And a lot of this is based off of trust. Recovering addicts and alcoholics, generally speaking, do not trust a lot of people. And you do not, if you have gained any trust back, the last thing that you want to do is lose it. And a lot of times that happens through gossip, and you may not even understand that you're doing it or realize that you're doing it. But if you are, you need to stop. So that is it. When they come home, don't make it awkward. Don't make it super like it's earth shattering or aliens have now landed on planet Earth and yada, yada, yada. Find a support group of your own. Ask some questions. Be encouraging. Don't be overbearing. Don't hover over them. Don't be a helicopter and, watch every move or let me go to this. I see a lot of times people will, when somebody comes home, they'll put a tracker on their phone. I think that's one of the worst ideas in the world because, again, going back to trust, they don't trust me. So they want to put a tracker on my phone, or they'll monitor bank accounts and stuff like that. I get it, the bank account thing to a certain degree, especially if you're the one putting money into the account. That's fine. And I suppose I'm okay with the tracker if you're making the car payment. But if this is their own, if they're providing for themselves and they're providing everything for themselves, you have no right really to do any of that stuff. If they're living underneath your roof, it could be a different situation. But again, I encourage you to do not blow this up. They're coming home. They're coming home for a reason. It could be a very good opportunity for them, or it could be extremely disastrous. And a lot of that does hinge on how you react and the way that you present yourself. So if you have any questions, or if you have a situation where you have a loved one that's maybe in treatment, or they're, on their recovery journey per se as of right now, and you have any questions and you want to talk to either myself or Ben, you can email us, tom@realrecoverytalk.com and ben@realrecoverytalk.com. And we'll talk to you about your situation and see if we can give you any words of encouragement and hopefully help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.